When I turned 65 years old, something shifted in how I looked at money. You see, for most of my life, I did what I thought was smart. I clipped coupons. I chose the store brand everything. I reused foil, tea bags, and even bread bags. I thought that was what being responsible looked like. And to be honest, back then, it probably was. My wife and I worked hard. We raised our kids, we paid off the mortgage, and we did our best to save for retirement. We were proud of being frugal. But somewhere along the way, I started to feel tired. Not just physically, but emotionally, financially, even spiritually. I realized that some of the habits I believed were helping us were actually hurting us, quietly, slowly. And without me noticing, they were draining not just our money, but our time, our joy, and even the peace inside our home. Today, I want to share with you 9 frugal habits my wife and I have let go of after retirement. Not because they were wrong, not because we've become careless, but because we've come to understand something deeper. Frugality should never feel like punishment. It should bring peace, not pressure. It should support your life, not control it. So if you're in this season of life, maybe retired, maybe thinking about it, or maybe just tired of always holding on so tight, I hope this brings you a little clarity, a little permission, and maybe even a little joy. Because this stage of life, it's not about survival anymore. It's about meaning. Let's talk about what we let go of and what we gained in return. 1. Always choosing the cheapest option. For years, I thought the smartest thing I could do with my money was to choose the cheapest option every time. I used to say things like, "Why pay more when you can get it for less?" That thinking guided nearly every purchase I made. Groceries, clothes, tools, shoes, it didn't matter. If it was on sale or marked as the lowest price, I picked it. No questions asked. At the time, it felt like I was being wise. After all, we were raising kids, working paycheck to paycheck, and trying to save what little we could. We didn't have the luxury of premium anything. And truthfully, that mindset did help us survive those tougher years. But what I didn't realize back then was that cheap often comes at a cost, one you don't see until much later. Let me tell you what changed. My wife bought a pair of walking shoes, real good ones. She did her research, found a pair of orthopedic shoes that were over $130. I looked at her like she'd lost her mind. We could have bought 4 pairs for that price at the discount store. But 5 years later, she's still wearing them, still walking every morning without pain, still standing at the kitchen sink without needing to sit down after 10 minutes. Meanwhile, I was going through cheap sneakers every 6 months, complaining about my knees and back. It finally hit me. Value isn't about what costs less upfront. Value is about what lasts, what works, and what makes your life easier. We've started applying that thinking to other areas too. We bought cast iron pans that replaced 5 scratched up nonstick skillets. I got a winter coat that cost me a few $100s, but I haven't needed to replace it in 10 years. Even our mattress, we finally bought a good one and sleep better because of it. So now we don't ask, what's the cheapest? We ask, what's the smartest long-term choice? Because at this age, we're not looking to collect more stuff. We're looking to make life simpler, easier, and more comfortable. Choosing quality over cheap isn't being fancy. It's being kind to yourself, especially when you've spent decades putting everyone else first. 2. Obsessing over every penny. When I was in my 40s and 50s, I thought tracking every single cent was just part of being financially responsible. I kept notebooks. I wrote down every expense, even a cup of coffee or a $2 pack of gum. I knew what we spent on gas each week, how many rolls of toilet paper we used each month, and how much was left in every envelope. Now, I'm not saying that budgeting is bad, not at all. In fact, in the early years, those habits probably saved us from real trouble. But as I got older, I started to notice something. I wasn't tracking our spending to feel free. I was tracking it because I was anxious. I'd log into our bank account 3, 4, sometimes 5 times a day. I'd worry if we went over our grocery budget by $10. I'd get frustrated if my wife spent money on something I didn't think we needed. It started to feel like our whole life revolved around pinching pennies and monitoring every move. It wasn't peace. It was pressure. The turning point came during a dinner with our grandkids. My wife and I were going over receipts while they were sitting there waiting to play. She looked at me and said, "Honey, they won't remember how much we saved on tomatoes, but they'll remember if we made time for them." That moment stuck with me. We decided to simplify. Now we use a basic monthly budget with just a few key categories: groceries, home expenses, and what we call our joy fund. Everything else, bills, savings, giving, it's all automated. And guess what? The world didn't fall apart. We're actually more in control now than when I was tracking every penny. But more importantly, we're calmer. We're present. We've reclaimed the time and mental space that was being swallowed by spreadsheets and numbers. I've learned that being frugal doesn't mean you have to become a full-time accountant. You don't need a receipt for everything. You don't need to monitor every cup of coffee or every light bulb. You need a system that works. And then you need to trust yourself enough to live your life without checking your bank account every morning. 3. Feeling guilty about enjoying life. This one took me a long time to admit. I used to feel guilty every time we spent money on something fun. A nice dinner out, a movie, a new pair of earrings for my wife. Even simple things, like buying a fresh bouquet of flowers for the kitchen table, felt like splurges we had to explain. It's like I had this invisible rulebook in my head. You only spend money on what you need. And everything else? That's selfish, wasteful, irresponsible. But here's what I didn't realize back then. Life isn't just about getting by. It's about living well. We spent our younger years sacrificing, budgeting, working hard, and putting others first. We skipped vacations. We cooked every meal at home. We reused everything. And don't get me wrong, we're proud of that. But if you never allow yourself to enjoy the fruits of that labor, what was it all for? One night, my wife looked at me across the dinner table and said, "When do we get to start enjoying this life we've built?" I didn't have a good answer, so I started thinking differently. Now, we plan for fun. We set aside a small amount each month just for enjoyment. It doesn't have to be big or fancy. It just has to bring us joy. Sometimes it's a trip to the lake. Sometimes it's a quiet dinner at our favorite spot. Sometimes it's a new book or a puzzle or flowers on the table just because. And do you know what changed? Everything. We laugh more. We argue less. We stopped feeling like we had to earn joy and started understanding that we deserve it. Not because we're perfect, not because we're rich, but because we're alive. And this time is precious. If you've been putting off joy until some future day when everything is in order, I want to tell you something from the heart. That day may never come unless you choose it. Joy doesn't have to be expensive. It just has to be allowed. You've earned this chapter of your life. Let it be full of meaning. And yes, let it be full of joy too. 4. Keeping things just in case. If you walked into our garage a few years ago, you would have seen it stacked floor to ceiling. Old cords from electronics we didn't own anymore. Kitchen gadgets still in boxes. Paint cans with an inch of dried paint left at the bottom. Holiday decorations we hadn't used in a decade. And tools. So many tools I forgot what half of them were for. Every time I suggested throwing something out, I heard myself say the same thing. Better keep it, just in case. Maybe you've said that too. That phrase became my reason to hold on to everything. But what I didn't realize was that I wasn't just holding on to stuff. I was holding on to habits. Habits of scarcity. Habits from a time when we really did need to stretch every penny and reuse every item. But we aren't in that time anymore, and we're not those people anymore. The wake-up call came from our daughter. She came to visit and gently said, "Dad, if something happened to you, who would have to deal with all of this?" She didn't say it with judgment. She said it with love, and it hit me like a freight train. I realized that by keeping so much just in case, I wasn't protecting anyone. I was passing the burden forward. So we started decluttering. Not everything, not all at once, but enough to feel a difference. We donated tools to a local trades program. We gave extra dishes and furniture to our nieces and nephews. We even had a little yard sale, not for the money, but just to give things a new home. And our house began to breathe again. We found that our minds were clearer, our spaces were calmer, and we could actually enjoy the home we worked so hard for. We no longer felt like we were drowning in stuff. We had room for peace, room for memories, room to live. Now, when I ask myself, should I keep this just in case? I follow it up with a second question. Will it still matter in 5 years? And more often than not, the answer is no. Letting go doesn't mean being careless. It means choosing what matters. And at this age, I want to leave behind a legacy of clarity, not clutter. 5. Avoiding fun spending. For the longest time, I treated hobbies and fun spending like luxuries we couldn't afford. Anything that wasn't directly related to food, bills, or gas. That went on the maybe someday list. And you know what happened? Someday never came. I stopped fishing. My wife stopped sewing. We passed on concerts, movies, even a weekend road trip because it wasn't in the budget. But what we didn't realize at the time was that fun isn't optional. Fun is fuel, especially in the later years of life. See, we thought we were being responsible, but what we were really doing was draining ourselves. We were working hard to keep money in the bank, but we weren't putting anything back into ourselves. That all changed the day my doctor told me my blood pressure was up and my stress levels were higher than they should be. He said, "You need to move your body and your mind, not just for your health, but for your happiness." So we made a small but powerful change. We created what we now call our Joy Fund. Every month, we each get a small amount of money. No questions asked, no guilt attached. My wife uses hers for her garden and sometimes good yarn. I use mine for puzzles, fishing gear, or even the occasional drive down to the lake with a good sandwich in the cooler. You would not believe the difference it's made. We laugh more. We sleep better. We've reconnected not just with each other, but with the parts of ourselves we'd forgotten about while raising kids and paying bills. Hobbies are not selfish. Rest is not a waste. Fun is not foolish. You've spent your whole life taking care of others. Please, don't forget to take care of the part of you that still wants to enjoy being alive. 6. Delaying gratification. Forever. There's a certain pride in waiting. Holding off. Saying, "No, not yet. Maybe later." I used to think that was the ultimate sign of discipline. And in some ways, it was. That mindset got us through hard times. It kept us from going into debt. It helped us stay grounded. But here's what I didn't realize. When you delay gratification for too long, you start delaying joy. Without even noticing it, I used to tell myself, we'll travel once the mortgage is paid. Then it was, we'll do it after the kids finish college. Then it became, maybe when we retire. But retirement came, and guess what? I was tired. I didn't want to plan a big trip. I didn't feel up to learning something new. I had waited so long that I forgot how to say yes. Then one day, I saw a neighbor sitting in her backyard around a fire pit, roasting marshmallows with her grandkids. It was simple. It wasn't fancy, but it was beautiful. And I thought, I've wanted that exact thing for years. Why haven't I done it? That weekend, I started looking online, found a used fire pit, picked it up, bought a pack of marshmallows and a bundle of firewood. My grandkids came over the next night, and we had one of the best evenings I can remember. No phones, no stress, just laughter and warmth and a sky full of stars. That fire pit wasn't just a purchase, it was a reminder. Joy delayed too long can become joy denied. Now we still save, we still plan, but we also give ourselves permission to say yes when it matters, while we can. You don't need to do everything all at once, but I encourage you, do something. Don't wait for perfect timing. Life rarely gives you that. Sometimes, the best gift you can give your future self is letting yourself enjoy what matters now. 7. Fixating on deals, not purpose. There was a time in my life when finding a deal felt like winning the lottery. I clipped coupons every Sunday, waited for mailers, subscribed to every store flyer I could find. If something was on sale, I convinced myself we needed it, because look how much we were saving. But here's the truth that hit me after retirement. Just because something is on sale doesn't mean it's worth buying. I can't tell you how many times I walked out of a store with things I didn't even know we needed until I saw the discount. Gadgets for the kitchen, a new flashlight even though we had 5, another throw blanket because it was 60% off. Eventually, we ended up with drawers full of clutter and closets packed with deals. But you know what we didn't have? Room to breathe, peace of mind, and often, no idea where our money went. It took years to realize I was chasing dopamine, not value. That little rush of getting a deal made me feel like I was being wise, but in reality, I was letting marketing tricks guide my choices. We've changed that now. Before we buy anything, we ask one simple question. Does this add real value to our life? Not, is it on sale? Or, could we use it someday? But, is this meaningful, useful, or joyful right now? We stopped impulse shopping at big box stores. We unsubscribed from promotional emails. We even started leaving items in our cart online for a full 24 hours before deciding to buy. And more often than not, we realize we don't need it. The most powerful shift was when we started spending with intention instead of reaction. When we buy less, we appreciate more. When we stop reacting to sales, we start responding to purpose. So now, I no longer chase the deal. I chase the why. And you know what? Life feels calmer, cleaner, more meaningful. Because saving $10 on something you never needed? That's not saving. It's spending in disguise. 8. Trying to do everything myself. I come from a generation where doing it yourself was just how things were done. We fixed our own cars, we mowed our own lawns, we patched our roofs and tiled our floors. There was pride in it, knowing you could take care of your home and your family with your own 2 hands. And I still believe in self-reliance. But what I've learned over time is this. You don't have to do it all yourself, all the time, forever. For years after retirement, I kept pushing myself to be the one who fixed everything, even when my back started hurting, even when my knees complained, even when I didn't know how to do the repair. I'd still try, just to save a few dollars. One day, I was up on a ladder trying to clean out the gutters. My foot slipped just enough to scare me. I didn't fall, thank God, but it shook me up. That night, my wife said, "Honey, if something happened to you over gutter leaves, how would that be worth it?" She was right. So I started making a different kind of decision. The kind where I ask, what's the true cost of doing this myself? Not just money, but time, energy, health, and peace of mind. Now, I still take on small jobs around the house when I feel up to it, but I also call in help. I hire the neighborhood kid to mow the lawn. I pay a handyman to fix what I no longer feel confident doing. I order groceries online if I'm having a slow week. And do you know what? It doesn't make me feel weak. It makes me feel wise. We didn't work all our lives just to wear ourselves out in retirement. Sometimes spending money on help isn't about luxury. It's about stewardship. It's about making room for rest, recovery, and being fully present with the people we love. So if you're like I was, pushing yourself out of habit or pride, I encourage you to ask, is this the best use of my strength right now? You may find that letting go of certain responsibilities gives you the freedom to hold on to the ones that really matter. 9. Thinking learning was for the young. When I was younger, I always admired people who knew about money. I figured they were just born good at it. I wasn't. I didn't have fancy degrees or financial training. I learned about budgets from trial and error, and mostly error. But what took me too long to learn was that wisdom isn't fixed. It's something we grow into at any age. After we retired, I felt a little lost with money. Our income had changed. Expenses were different. I wasn't sure how to handle healthcare costs, taxes, or even whether we could afford to take a trip. And for a while, I felt embarrassed to admit that. I thought, I should know this by now. But then I realized, no one handed us a manual for this stage of life. So I did something I hadn't done in a while. I started learning again. I listened to podcasts on retirement finances while I walked in the morning. I signed up for a free online workshop about Medicare. My wife read a book on estate planning and then taught me what she learned. We even sat down with a financial coach who helped us look at things from a fresh angle. And let me tell you, learning didn't make me feel old. It made me feel alive. I started to see money not as something to fear, but something to shape. I learned how to adjust our spending to better reflect what we care about most. I learned that it's never too late to get clarity, never too late to ask questions, never too late to start again smarter. Some of the best decisions we've made in this chapter of life came after 70 years old. If you think you're just bad with money or too old to start, I want to tell you that's a lie. You're not too late. You're not too far gone. You're not stuck. You're wise. You're experienced. And the willingness to learn now? That's what sets you apart. Keep asking questions. Keep reading. Keep growing. Because every step toward clarity is a step toward peace. If there's one thing I've learned after all these years, it's this. Being wise with money isn't about knowing all the right answers. It's about having the courage to change the questions. For most of my life, I asked, how can I spend less? Now I ask, what's truly worth spending on? I used to ask, how do I save every penny? Now I ask, how do I save my time, my energy, and my peace of mind? Letting go of these old habits wasn't always easy. They came from a time when we had to be careful, when survival came first. But we're not in survival mode anymore. We've made it through the hard years, and now we deserve something different. Not extravagance, but intention. Not more stuff, but more meaning. You don't have to prove yourself by how little you spend. You don't have to carry the burden of perfection. You've already done the hard work. Now, it's time to let your money serve you, your values, your joy, your relationships. Because frugality should never feel like punishment. It should feel like peace. So if something in this video resonated with you, I hope you take it as permission, not from me, but from yourself, to let go of what no longer serves you, to spend where it matters, to live a life that reflects what you truly care about. And if you're willing, I'd love to hear from you. In the comments, tell me, what's one smart money habit you've let go of, and what did it give you back in return? Because your story might be the one that gives someone else the clarity they've been searching for. And if you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing. Here on Wise Elders Insight, we don't just talk about saving money. We talk about living well, with dignity, purpose, and heart. Thanks for spending this time with me. I'll see you in the next one.